welcome to our Great Players of the Past class. And just like the players, this class is going to be the great classes of the past, because this is the last one on Thursday. So you guys made it. Good job. The next Great Players of the Past will be in 2 weeks on Tuesday. And we're just going to alternate on Tuesday. So Tuesday will be Endgame, then Great Players, and so forth. Forever. And ad infinitum, and and so forth. Then on Thursday, we're going to have a Blitz tournament instead. So we're going to talk about Siegbert Tarrasch because he invented Tarrasch talking, which I just won a prize for. So I figure I should talk about him. He was German, of course, and he was born in countries that don't exist, like Prussian Silesia. What? Just making up countries here. Okay, and he died at the age of 71. That's like 140 now, right? He was considered top 5 in the world at his peak, probably in the 1890s. And he beat a lot of the best players who ever lived at that time. And he was also a medical doctor, so he was busy. He had to, do his work. Now, my understanding, I could be wrong because things change. There's 2 people on Earth right now who are medical doctors and grandmasters. These like PhD, like Reuben Fine. Are you kidding me? But anyway, so I have a funny story about that because I like stories. I went to my doctor about 8 months ago, and he knew I was a chess player because we talked about it. And he said, oh, I went to medical school with the only doctor who's a grandmaster. And I said, Alex Scherzer? And he goes, yeah. I said, yeah, no, I'm good friends with him. And then I corrected him because there's another one. He didn't know about that. And that's Yona Koshishvili, not to be confused with Kashishvili, who's somebody else. Who's not a doctor. Yona Koshishvili is married to somebody you've heard of. Not him. Yeah, he's married to one of the Polgar sisters, the one you haven't heard of.
Sophia.
Correct. Yeah, wait, you never heard of her.
Oh.
Yeah, so they're married,
Yes.
and they live in Israel, then they lived in Toronto, now they're back in Israel, I think. And who knows what's going on now. So Tarrasch was a grandmaster and a doctor, and he was a fantastic player. You can tell by his Wikipedia article, it's pretty long. See, there you go. Now, Tarrasch, at that time, a lot of the top players in the world did not agree on how you should play chess, so they played sort of differently. And then they would argue. The problem was, people actually do that today, but, if you're 1900, and the other guy's 1200, and he's right, you're still going to win the argument, because you're 1900 and he's 1200. So, if you're like, white has the advantage, and he says black has the advantage, I mean, playing it out doesn't really solve it because you're better than him. But, engine could help you. So when Tarrasch would argue about the way you should play chess with weaker players, he would be right. And when he argued with better players, he'd be wrong. So doesn't mean he was right or wrong. Of course, you've heard of the Tarrasch defense. And actually, there's more than one. And there's also the games of Tarrasch. There's always a different picture. There's this. I like looking at the different pictures. And then there's a Wikipedia article about the Tarrasch defense. And in fact, this is the one in the Queen's Gambit, and of course there's the Tarrasch variation of the French defense, which you're all familiar with. Okay, and that's in on move 3, white plays knight to d2, and that's the Tarrasch. Okay. And they even talk about that. See all now then semi-Tarrasch. Yeah, semi-Tarrasch was played yesterday by Kramnik. It's where you take on d5 with the knight, and you give white a big center, then you resign. So, well, he drew. So that's why he's top in the world. Okay, so Tarrasch was not only a great player and a great teacher and a doctor, he was also an opening theorist. Okay, but more importantly, let's look at the games. Now, what I like about Tarrasch's games is, and this was according to the people who liked him, I'm not necessarily one of them, but got to do somebody. He had a universal style and played different ways, and games 2 and 3 really show that. Game 2 is a positional masterpiece, and in game 3 he sacked all his pieces. So you guys can take a nap during game 2, but game 3 you can wake up. I like game 2 more, because that's me. Okay, now this was a game against Nimzovich, who you've heard of. Yeah, some of them. Okay, and you might have heard of the Nimzo Indian. Yeah, that's Nimzovich. Yeah.
Weren't they best of friends?
Well, I don't know about that. Yeah. Now, yeah, they were pretty opinionated. Sort of like, you and Tom here were best of friends a few minutes ago. Okay, so, because you argue about, who's right, and then whoever wins, I guess, is right. Now, Nimzovich senior master that I know, when he was a beginner, which was like when he was 2300, I mean, he was looking in a book, and he said, that's a funny name for an opening, the Nimzoindian. It's like, what? And it turned out, he didn't know who Nimzovich was, they didn't put a hyphen. So they made it all one word, and he's like, what kind of name was that for an opening? Okay, so Nimzovich was white, and our hero is black. Okay, it's the first time in my life I've called somebody German my hero. Okay, knight f3, c5, ooh, Tarrasch, see? You thought I was kidding, but there you go. Okay, and we transpose into the open that's named after him. Now let's see how smart my audience is, other than Dave. Which world champion, the most recent world champion, used to play the Tarrasch all the time? He played it like at least half the time against d4. Anybody? Then he stopped playing it. No, nobody? Okay, Dave. Man, it was tough. He was my go-to guy. World champion.
Yeah, Kasparov.
There you go. Yeah, Garry Kasparov played the Tarrasch every game, then he stopped. He's like, that's enough. And he has a lot of world championship match games with Karpov, and he has a lot of wins before he played Karpov. Okay. So a lot of the theory that we know today actually is still from the games in the 80s and 90s.
Did he stop after matches with Karpov?
Yeah, he started playing other stuff. Well, first of all, he also played the King's Indian in Grunfeld, but he wasn't playing the King's Indian against Karpov in the World Championships, and when he did, he didn't do well. And he has some famous games. He has some Grunfelds. You can't just play one opening, because even Karpov could get an advantage, even though he doesn't know any computer stuff. But by playing the Tarrasch, the King's Indian, and the Grunfeld, I mean, and he knew them better than anybody, so. Okay, so e3, which is what I play, so you know it's a mistake. Okay, and grandmasters today, if they were well prepared, they wouldn't play e3, although that's actually what I play. And the main lines generally feature white fianchettoing as bishop at some point. Normally you would take and play knight c3 and g3 and bishop g2, and I refer you to every Karpov-Kasparov game ever played. Okay, but these guys have a good excuse. Those guys weren't born yet. So, okay, so e3 is sort of symmetrical and can be boring, but not necessarily. Okay, knight f6. Okay, bishop d3, that's an odd move. So when I'm white, I play knight c3, and now I play a3. I've played this many times. And the idea is you're waiting for black to move the bishop, then you can take this pawn, then you can play b4, and then you've equalized. Yay! I'm saying white's equalized because that was funny. Yeah, it's a smart audience here. Okay, so that's sort of a main line, so you can do that. Most people will take on d5 at some point, and this may confuse some of you. It might confuse all of you. You get these positions where you can have with colors reversed also, and you have an extra tempo. So just to show you something that's funny, this position, it's white to move, because it is. I'm not lying to you. If it was black to move, this is just a Panov Caro-Kann. Well, except black is white. And what I mean is, okay, here's what I mean, like the Caro-Kann, you've heard of it, okay, and then the Panov is this, okay, and then c4 is the Panov, and now we have this position, okay, and that's the same position, except white's black and black's white. So you could have this position with black to move, and that would be sort of like the game that I'm showing you, except black is white. And if white went here, this is just a normal Panov Caro-Kann, normal. Okay, so a lot of times you get things with colors reversed, but you don't notice, because the colors are reversed. Okay, and bishop d3 is sort of inviting black to play d takes c4, and it's just a QGA with an extra tempo. There's no other way to put it. Oh, I can put it other ways if you want. No? Okay, so for example, and what did he play? He played knight c6 to confuse me. Okay, so the Queen's Gambit, you've heard of it, right? c4. Now if I take, that's the Queen's Gambit accepted. Knight f3 is the most common move. e3 here. This is a very common position. Thousands and thousands and thousands of Grandmaster games. And Tarrasch could have had it, and it would have been his move, because white played bishop d3, and then bishop takes c4. But in the game I showed you, white just played bishop takes c4. So bishop d3 is not a move you would play to get an advantage. That's, your tempo down to Queen's Gambit accepted. And generally, in all these queen pawn openings, when you're both moving your d and c pawns, if somebody takes on c4 or c5, you're hoping that your opponent's already moved their bishop, so you're losing a tempo. And in fact, I discussed this in previous lectures in the tournament that I played in here. My opponent took on c4, and I played bishop f1 takes c4. In another game in the same tournament, I played bishop d3, and then I took on c4. I got the same position, but I was a tempo down in one of them. And I won both somehow, because opponents were very helpful later. Okay, now that's technical. It doesn't matter a lot, but I'd rather be my move than my opponent's move. So bishop d3 is not the most accurate move. Okay, then castles, bishop d6, again, that's not a move that I would play. Okay, b3, and then we just get some boring position. And the players agreed to a draw. Now we'll look at the next game. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so b6, knight d2, bishop b7. So you can see the position's completely symmetrical, except this knight would be here. That would be symmetrical, or vice versa. So that's the only difference. It's not going to change the evaluation of the position much. And generally, between, I would say, 1890 and 1930, 1940, I mean, you know, they played the opening, and then when they wrote notes on the opening, they were very suspicious. They were like, oh, you shouldn't go there. And I'm like, what? So they weren't the best opening players. Their moves were okay, but their understanding of how to get an advantage or to play accurately was, you know, we'll see that later. Okay, rook c1, queen e7. Okay, finally somebody did something. C takes d5, e takes d5. And now, if I was white, well, I wouldn't have played c takes d5, I don't think. One idea, which I don't see how to do, but maybe he did do it, is to put a knight on f5, or as I like to say,
Knight f5.
knight f5. In fact, that's the benefit of what this pawn was here and now it's not. So somehow I would probably try to get this knight to f5. I would also like to play knight e5, but that seems like I would lose a pawn. Black has a lot of guys on e5. So if I'm never playing knight e5, and it's really, really, really hard to play knight f5, because it takes like 4 moves. Maybe he did do that. Conversely, black can easily play knight e4. So I'm not a big fan of what white did there. And I had a teacher before all of you were born, and his name is Gregory Kaidanov from Kentucky, born and bred in Kentucky. And he would tell me in his thick Russian accent, maintain tension, which in English is maintain tension. And that means everybody can capture everybody, but nobody does. And lower-rated players, they can't handle the truth, so they just take. Okay, so Nimzovich took, and now that gets rid of some of the tension in the center, but it makes it easier for black to play knight e4 because there's no pawn here on e6, because it's gone, and now the queen defends e4. Okay, knight h4, so I guess Nimzovich is better than me. He found a way to f5 I didn't notice. So I was right, but I was still wrong, because that's why I get paid the big bucks. So that's why Nimzovich took. He wanted to get his knight to f5. Okay, that's an unusual way to do it, but all right. And he played g6, which I wouldn't recommend unless I could play bishop g7. And this is very funny. When my dad was alive, he would say to me often, both sides stand badly. Okay, and this is a very interesting way to play chess, in that you do something that a good player would say is bad, and you know it's bad. You know what you're doing. And your opponent, to make it bad, has to make a bad move. Then you have to decide which one hurts you more. And then if you don't know, then the game's interesting. Okay, this is the Dave Vest method, I would assume. Okay, so we get positions where everybody's confused. Instead of I play a good move and you play a good move and we agree to a draw, well, I don't want to play g6 because my bishop's over here. And I don't want to play knight h4. I want my knight in the center. So both sides did something they don't want to do, and who does that help? The answer is I don't know. And so if the top players in the world today, and I complain about this every video, if they want to stop drawing all of their games, you can just play where both sides are making concessions, and then we see who plays better chess. Instead, a lot of the top players, some of them, they play very safe. And then there's no mistakes, and then it's a draw. And the reason there's no mistakes is their opponent's not putting pressure on them. However, players like Mamedyarov are putting a lot of pressure, Nepomniachtchi, and I know I pronounced it wrong, be quiet over there, I mean at home. And the engine doesn't like their moves. The engine says, you're making mistakes. And then their opponents make more mistakes because the position is difficult, and now we have decisive games and everybody's happy. Okay? And then when Carlsen plays Mamedyarov and Nepomniachtchi, then Carlsen wins. Okay, because their play is slightly unsound. Okay, so knight h4, g6. I don't know if grandmasters would play that today. Knight on h4 is a little suspicious. Okay, back to f3, and black played g7. They agreed to a draw. Repetition of position. Okay. So Nimzovich lost 2 tempi on purpose because he thought g6 was really bad. So this is the position we had. And then it was white's move. And now black has to play g6, and it's black's move. In my opinion, that probably wasn't worth it. But okay. So rook to d8, Paul Morphy style. The rook on a8 is silly. We're going to line up with the queen. I say this every time I give a private lesson. Because every time I give a private lesson, either my student or their opponent hangs all their pieces. And it's always for the same reason. There's this piece lined up against that piece, the other guy doesn't notice, and then bad stuff happens. Very bad stuff. Man, it's every game I ever look at with my students. Sometimes it's my students' opponents, that's okay. Right? When it's my student, I'm like, your queen's lined up with their bishop, and they play bishop takes queen. So Tarrasch wants the rook lined up with the queen, and it doesn't do anything now, but later. Okay, d takes c5, and black has the famous, let's see how famous it is.
Hanging pawns.
Hanging pawns, except they're not hanging. No. So again, you can argue whether they're good or bad. They control all these squares. They're together, so that's good. But other pawns can't defend them, so white tries to capture them. And if somehow I can trade this pawn for this pawn, that seems like I would be cheating, then I have good control of d4. Seems like I would be cheating to do that. Now in this particular position, and again, most people are pretty dogmatic about chess. They're like, things are good or things are bad, and I'm always confused. And I see the good and bad and everything, and I'm like, I don't know, and then I guess and I'm wrong. And then I have to lecture instead of playing tournaments. That's the life I've chosen to lead. So these are sometimes good and sometimes bad. In my opinion, these are good because I don't see how white's going to attack them or take them. Like this is defended, and these pieces don't look like they're attacking those pawns.
Question.
Yeah.
What about rook to e1 with the idea of going e4?
Yeah, that's legal. I'm not going to argue with you.
And then if you can take away his d pawn, then the c4 square and the isolation.
Right, so after rook e1, I would probably either move my knight from c6, or I would play knight e4. Nobody knows. If he played rook e1, we'll find out.
Knight e4, that's one.
Bishop b5. Totally confusing you. You like knight e4 after rook e1?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, e4 is a good idea, I agree. Because if the pawn goes to d4, we got the nice c4 square for all of our pieces. So I sort of like that. But yeah, he played bishop b5. I like to explain the moves to the audience. Maybe the audience could explain that to me. I know he lost the game.
Pinning E to E8.
Wow. I mean, he's half kidding over there.
I think that's in response to knight to e4 coming, so now that he can, well...
Oh, then he could take with the knight? Okay.
Yeah, but I still don't like that because...
Yeah, I don't like bishop b5. Well, I mean, white did lose, so maybe there was a reason. Yeah. So I don't like what white's doing. White's taking everything, he's moving his knight back and forth, he's moving his bishop a couple times, and I like where black's pieces are. They're pretty nice. Yeah. So I prefer black already. Knight e4. Okay, that's... Knight goes to e4, your knight can't go to e5. Yeah. I mean, black has just much better control of the center here. These pawns are controlling the center. These three pieces are controlling e5. And these three pieces are controlling e4. I mean, I got everything going here.
I bet you he captures.
Yeah. He captured something. Were you thinking that? He did play bishop b5. So, in grandmasters today, we don't give our bishops away lightly. We like our bishops. But this was 1914, so I'm innocent. Okay, took back. Queen c2, getting his queen off of this terrible line here. Knight takes d2, knight takes d2. And again, any GM is going to take black here just because of the bishops. I mean, I got bishops. And you have this potential threat, which probably I'm going to see. Probably. No? Yeah, I think so.
But now he does his b4 move.
Well, it's not your turn though.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah. No, now we're gonna do one of the tricks that I tried to. Okay, D4, and this is very similar to a game I'm sure you've all memorized. That's funny. Kasparov, Portish, Nick Sitch, 83. Right? Oh, you should see them all nodding and thumbs up. In that game, Kasparov was obviously white, and he had a bishop on B2, and he had a pawn on D4, and he played D5 sacking a pawn, and he got a big attack against Portish's king, and Portish's king went for a nice walk up the board, which didn't work out too well. It's going to work out later in the next game, but that's... Yeah. So D4 stops White's only checkmating idea, and it opens up my bishop here. Now my bishops look pretty good. So I know Karen likes to sacrifice pawns, so she was like, D4, rawr, right? And I mean, bishops are bishops. If you got open bishops, you have a chance to get them. And as I tell all of my students, when you have the two bishops, if they ever have the two bishops, which they haven't had yet, if you ever have the two bishops, then one of your bishops has no counterpart. We both have a dark squared bishop, or as I like to say, the green squared bishop. And the white squared bishop that black has, white doesn't have any of that, so that's our strong bishop. There's no way to thwart that. Okay, you gotta take a pawn is a pawn. Bishop takes h2 check. You gotta take that. And by the way, this infuriates me more than anything, which is saying something. When somebody sacks a bishop on h2 or h7, you take it. I don't care if it loses, take it anyway. Because if you don't take it, you just lost a pawn, you're getting mated. If you take it, you're getting mated, but you're up a bishop. That's better. So if the guy doesn't mate you, you win. If you play king h1 and the guy doesn't mate you, you still lose. You either lose or you lose with king h1. So take it. You have a chance to win. Even if it loses, you could still win. If you play king h1, you can't win. You just lose for sure. So if king h2 loses, play it anyway. You can't just not take those. Okay, queen h4. Now even the audience finds the right move. Okay, good. Bishop g2. Threatening. What's the threat? Let's see if they can get one. Don't tell them, Dave.
Queen h1.
Queen h1 mate. So you got a f3. Now why is that a bad move? Anybody? Are you serious? And you're looking at the board? That's their first mistake.
Still mate.
No, king f2.
Why you push F3?
No. Why is it a bad move? No, don't look at the board. That's not going to help you.
Never play F3.
Never play f3. Yeah.
It's
Obviously.
automatic.
Okay, now, probably f3 was forced because, which you still never play it. I'm thinking in this position, and this is funny because we had a chess camp here where the average rating was -1 billion, and I'm being nice because we're on camera. And there was a game that was just like this. Very similar, except much easier. And the game ended, black was up a queen, and black went check, 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 and they agreed to a draw. And the person with the king was really mad, they didn't want to draw. Anyway, I was like, yeah, I've seen it all. And I was writing down, drawing And Carlos Perdomo, who was the IM, he wanted to give them a teaching moment. And every position after these checks, black could have put a rook over, well, it was white, could have put a rook and played mate. And then they were like, oh. So basically the person who was a queen ahead had mate and won every move, but perpetualed instead. And the person who got perpetualed's like, stop checking me, like I want to win. Down a queen. Okay, but I think after queen g4, rook d5, I guess you could play queen c5, but then you would lose your knight on d2. And that's got to be winning for black, right? I mean, I don't know which way you take, but I check and take your knight. Yeah. But that would indicate king h1 is better. I mean, I hate doing accurate analysis. That's not good. Oh, then I have queen h5, queen g5, and then take the knight. Yeah. So I would go here, and then I can't take the queen now because you would defend queen h5. So I play queen check, and then I take your queen, and then I take your knight. That's what you guys were thinking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Nimzovich probably thought he was winning, so he doesn't want to take the bishop. Black has a perpetual. That was a joke. Okay, so he played f3, breaking my rule, never play f3. Now, why am I showing you this game? Well, you sack all his pieces and winning, so you guys like that. But Tarrasch, in this game and in the third game, sack, 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 sack. You're like, okay, I understand who this guy is. In game 2, you're going to be like, who's this guy? And that's why he was a great player. All great players can do whatever they want. They just have a style, but obviously... You know. Now again, lower rated players, and of course I don't know what he did, even though I saw the game about 2 hours ago. I was busy losing to Dave, so very busy. I did last to move 6 before I had to resign though. Now, lower rated players, the only move they think of here is, you should say like 10 different moves, that makes me look bad.
Bishop takes F1.
Yeah, always play bishop f1. No, but they're like, I can take a rook. And basically, that's like the last thing you do. It might be the best move, but you try to do anything but that. You're like, how can I mate him? How can I continue the attack? How can I bring my rook into the game? How can you don't just take the rook and say, okay, I want to rook for a bishop. Now, if there is no attack and you have nothing and it's hopeless, okay, then maybe you take the rook. Okay? So I would be shocked if he took the rook. And now, take the rook. Ah, he played rook e8. Morphy would like that. That's the move you would all play. Because that rook did nothing. And now rook e2 looks annoying. Very annoying. Yeah. And so he's like, I can take the rook later, and if you save your rook, I'll play that same mate we were talking about. And if you take my bishop, now rook e8 makes a lot of sense due to checkmate. Okay, you could mate the guy or you could tease him a little. Okay. Lots of possible teasing going on. Okay. So rook e8, that's a brilliant move. And if I can make fun of my compatriots, because what are they going to do? Well, this guy made fun of, I want a lot of money making fun of him, so I better start making fun of him more. Yeah. A lot of grandmasters today have very negative thoughts about the players of yesteryear. And they're like, Morphy was 2,300. And they would say the same about Tarrasch. Those guys were no good. Okay, but I know a lot of guys who are between 2,000 and 2,300, and they're not playing rook fe8. They're not sacking, and playing a quiet move. They're never doing that, or thinking of it. So the guy's already like super GM for playing rook fe8 in my book. He could take a rook, he could play queen h1 check, he could have played queen g3, could have played bishop h3, and he played rook fe8. So he already, even if it's a bad move, he's a great player. Even thinking of that move makes him great. Now, if it was black's move, rook e2 would be pretty hard to meet. It's like unstoppable mate in 1. Although I did find a stop, queen g6 check. I did stop mate in 1, but it was really hard. So rook e, so that's a big threat. Okay, so Nimzovich played knight e4. That stops rook e2. I agree with that. Yeah. Okay. And he played queen h1. Again, you guys can find the right move. Bishop takes f1. And the problem is, if you take my bishop, I got a little skewer action going here. And that's one thing people don't realize. When you're checkmating somebody and they give up their queen, you take their queen and you win. So obviously white doesn't want to get checkmated and black sacrificed material. However, in this position, black is ahead material. So if I don't checkmate you, I'm still going to win. Now if you take my bishop, material's about equal, but you can't take my bishop because I have queen h2 check. So d5, now white has the attack. See, he's got this action here, he's got knight f6 check, he's got queen c3, and black resigned. All too many threats. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so that's, d5 was a really strong move. When top players are losing, they fight. They find some defense, they don't get mad, they'll give their queen away. They try to get counterplay. f5, the point of f5 will surprise you. You think it attacks the knight.
It's to get e2.
That's another point. My point was, my king has the f7 square. Yeah, because in this position, when you play knight f6, I'm sort of annoyed. But when I play f5, I got plenty of squares for my king. I'm not worried at all. And I want to take your knight, and I want to get the e2 square. It does a lot of stuff. Yeah. And, well, I'm assuming queen c3. Yeah, I did good. Yeah. Okay. And queen check, obviously king e1 hangs mate. Even I see that. Okay, so king e3. Rook takes e4, one of the points of f5. Now you can't take with the king, you can take with the pawn. F4 check, another point of F5. And this is what I call, you guys might call it, I call it very easy to analyze. And here's why, there's a reason. Every move is check, and white has one legal move. That's my favorite. This is check, white has one legal move. This is check, white has one legal move. I can calculate that. I can't calculate when you have 10 legal moves, I give up. I mean, I could, but I'd be wrong. Now I can't be wrong because you have one legal move. Okay, check. Now, white has more than one legal move, so now I'm in a lot of trouble. And I assume if you give your queen away, you're going to lose, right? Because you're down a queen. And you really are down a queen. I can take it. Whoa. I can take it. Then I can play queen d2 check, winning your rook. Okay. So if you play king e3, I'm pretty sure there's many mates in one. Queen here is mate. Rook here is mate. Queen e2 is mate. So I assume he either resigned or played king e5. Play king e5. And now, this will shock everybody in the room, including me, even though I know what I'm saying it. What's the material situation?
Even.
White's up 2 pawns. Oh no, even. Equal.
What's up 2 pawns?
Just kidding.
No having a stroke in my class.
It looks like it with the 2 pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, even. So it's even material, and the guy's king's on e5, then probably you're pretty safe with black. You're probably like, okay, this is going to be a good position, without doing a lot of analysis. Okay, queen h2 check. Does white have one legal move? No. White can play queen g3. Probably not important to analyze. Rook e8 check. White has 2 legal moves. That's a lot of legal moves. Wow. This is very nice. I hope it happened. It's really nice. You don't see that checkmate every day. That's checkmate. They don't believe it. I know it's checkmate because it says so here. That's a checkmate. And for those of you who are confused, there's a queen here. Okay, so he probably resigned or played king f6. He played king d7? Oh, he must have resigned. He wouldn't have played king mate in 1. So what's wrong with king f6? That looks like a fine move. Although I see checkmate in 1. So now I see a second checkmate in 1.
Queen f4.
Queen f4 is mate. I believe queen h4 is mate. Am I right?
Yeah.
And I assume if I don't play those moves, I'm still winning. And I think if it's white's move, I'm winning. Yeah, because you can't have your king here. So that was a brilliant attacking game from Tarrasch. He played d4, sacking a pawn. Then he sacked both of his bishops, and his follow-up was rook f e8. Now, one of the reasons people say that Morphy wasn't so good is that when Morphy destroyed people, they were like, well, that guy's no good. Okay, and that's, mainly that's true. Well, Dimzovich was pretty good. You've heard of Dimzovich, no? Some of you? More than half heard of Dimzovich. So if you heard of a guy in 1914, it's probably pretty good. And then he got beat like nobody's ever been beat like that ever. So that's when you know the guy's good. When you're destroying somebody and they're like a world top player. Now the next game is my favorite because there's no tactics and it's really boring. Yeah. Also, I also like it because I did a lecture on the other guy. That'll show him. He got a lot of accolades. He was like, oh, now he's turning over in his grave. He's like, wait, what happened? You said I was great. Richard Rady, I don't think he was ready for this game. No. Okay. So this game had a very suspicious opening, if I may say so myself. Okay, we got the 2 knights. Knight f6 is actually being played again. It used to be they only played bishop g4. Now they're playing knight f6 again. Yeah. Takes, nobody's playing takes. Okay, so that's an unusual move. Okay, and now we have a position, once again, we have a Caro-Kann. Every game's a Caro-Kann. Okay, so I didn't realize everything in chess was a Caro-Kann. So Caro-Kann, and then we play the exchange variation, and then knight f3, which is unusual, and then knight c3, which is unknown. And then we got the same position. All openings transposed into other openings. I'm not sure how exactly. Okay, so that's well, it actually started as a Caro-Kann, so that makes sense. Okay, bishop g4, h3, and now it's the moment of truth. If you play bishop h5, it's very dangerous because this diagonal's open, and you can't play bishop d7 because you play bishop h5. So then like there's g4, and there's bishop b5 check, and there's knight e5. If you take this, then white has the 2 bishops. This was 1922, so they didn't care about that. But now, they'd be like 2 bishops. So he took. which I agree with. And they got some really equal, boring position, which is funny because the last game, he was sacking all his pieces and playing like a lunatic. And now he plays a positional masterpiece. So if I was playing somebody in my own rating, I'd be pretty happy with black here because my bishop is outside, it's gone from these pawns. I can start pushing my queenside pawns, I can take the c-file, and I'm not impressed with this bishop. I know I should be, but I'm not. So if I was black, I'd be pretty happy here. Okay, a3, preventing what move?
Knight b4.
Yeah, because after knight b4, I was talking about two bishops for like 10 minutes, then I have to stop talking about it, because there's no more two bishops. Okay, so a3, and black I assume wants to advance over here, played a6, knight e2. Why did white play knight e2? I will accept two answers. Three answers?
She wants to attack the king side.
He's going to move his knight to the king side and attack, which isn't going to work, but yeah. It's funny that on c3, it doesn't really have a lot of places to go. And this pawn potentially could be attacked.
He wants to do something with the dark square bishop to play c3.
Yeah, he wants to play c3. Yeah, then his bishop can actually go somewhere, and his knight, he can protect his queen side. Yeah. And he played bishop f4 and c3. And again, this looks pretty boring. Knight a5, that looks reasonable. Rook d1, that's what I would have played. It has to be bad. Knight c4, bishop c1. Again, I know a lot of players who are expert and master, and they're not playing Rook d1, bishop c1, with the exception of Dave Vest, because he knows all the old games. And one of the things I like to do, of course, which I say all the time, is I like to retreat, and you guys laugh at me. But when you retreat your pieces, they don't get captured, they control all the squares in front of them, and they can go anywhere. And the reason you want to play bishop c1 is pretty obvious, because your b2 pawn is hanging, and as I've told somebody, probably Karen, don't want to move your b pawn, right? Yeah, because c pawn, boy, then your c pawn is really weak. Okay, and your a pawn's weak. But if you could just leave this like this and just chill, then nobody can do anything. The problem with playing bishop c1 with your rook on a1 is your rook is on a1. That ain't no good. But if you play rook d1 then bishop c1, now you're all happy. Because now your bishops are pointing to the king side, your knight's coming over, as Alan indicated, and my rooks are in the can go in the center. And white has two bishops, and either black does nothing or black opens it up, which helps the two bishops. Still, it's about equal, I think. Okay. Queen c6, knight g3, a5, here he comes, rook e1, b4, here he comes. This looks like a game that's played like today, like Kramnik, versus Kramnik. Yeah, did you see that movie? Yeah, I forgot who got the kid. Okay, so anybody? No, a couple of you? Okay. Who was it? Meryl Streep got him?
Yep.
No, but then she gave him back at the end. So actually Dustin Hoffman got him, yeah. Which Kramnik was he? Man, nobody's ever put Dustin Hoffman and Kramnik in the same sentence because they're 2 feet apart, height-wise. Okay, so should I tell that story? It's really long and boring. Yes. So in 1972, who played for the World Championship?
Fisher Statsky.
And who had a television show talking about it?
Big caveat.
No, he talked to Fisher. He didn't, a show during the match.
Oh man.
Oh, Shelby
He-
Lyman. Shelby Lyman.
Shelby Lyman. Very
Yeah.
good. Now, here's a story you don't hear very often, although I've told it many times. Shelby Lyman, very good. He was, an A player, expert, master, depending on who you ask. I'll say A player, because they're always the lowest when you... Anyway, so he had a show on where he would talk about the game from Iceland, and he became well known because everybody knew Fisher Spassky. And there was a party in New York, and at the party was Shelby Lyman and Dustin Hoffman, and they were introduced. And Shelby Lyman never heard of Dustin Hoffman, and Dustin Hoffman knew who Shelby Lyman was. So there you go. That's probably the last time that was going to happen. If only The Graduate was a better movie. Okay, so A takes B4. I thought you'd like that. Yeah. Okay. So knight F5, or as I like to say.
Knife F5.
Yeah. Okay, now I read the insane comments on the internet. You thought I didn't at home, but I do. I read all your insane comments, and I delete most of them. But this isn't on my page, so I didn't delete it. And on the insane internet comments, they were like, Rady played a fine game until this position. And like I said, you have to give your opponent some decisions to make, not just do nothing and then they can just draw. You got to make them, do something. And here, there was one guy on the internet in particular who was really mad about what Rady did here. He's like, this is the worst move ever. Rawr, I'm so mad. And Rady took that knight. And he's like, why is he giving his bishop away? And why is he messing his pawns up? Just bishop d8 and it's equal. What a terrible potser. And I'm thinking, bishop d8 might be better than taking the knight. That's a hard move to play. When my opponent plays knight f5 and I play bishop d8, I feel like I lost. Like, they made a move they wanted to make, and I'm like, all right, bishop d8. After bishop d8, then you're actually threatening to take the knight because the bishop's not hanging anymore. So probably that crazy guy was right, because sometimes they're right. Okay. So Rady took on f5, rook takes e7, and now, once again, they didn't care as much then as we do now. We stand on the shoulders of giants. I won't make the light bulb joke anymore. But, I mean, if we see 100 games where two bishops beats two knights, we start liking two bishops, and then we don't do it anymore. So back a long time ago, they were like, I don't know, knights are pretty good. And then the only person who didn't get the memo was Nakamura. He still thinks knights are good. Okay? And how's he been doing the last 5 years? Not good. Okay. So, have you guys still heard of Nakamura? You never heard of him. Oh yeah, you're on chess.com watching 1 Minute Chess. You've heard of him. Okay. So, BC3, BC3. The game was a long time ago, so BC. No, nothing. No. Should I make the basic chess endings joke? BCE? No. You even get that one? No? Okay, good. All right, so this is a weak backward pawn. This is a weak pawn, but I have a rook on the 7th and I have two bishops. And also, this is a Tarrasch lecture, so not good for black. Okay, G6, defending the F pawn. I don't think there's another way. It's attacked twice. And that gives up what kind of squares?
Dark squares.
Yeah, you can't. You can't do that. You got to put a bishop here now. You got to. So he should have cheated and put a bishop on G7. Then I actually like black's position. Then he's got E4 for his knight. Yeah. Okay. Bishop H6, knight B2, confusing everybody. Rook B1 takes. Rook B8 takes. Now we get my favorite theory going. Queen and bishop's better than queen and knight. There's a rook on the board, but I forgot about that. And queen G3 with obvious threats. Do you see them? You see them now? Okay. Rook D8, queen D6, queen E5. I was close. Is there a threat here? Like if it was white to move, is there like a winning move? I'm wondering if bishop G5 wins or rook C7 wins. I don't think white has a winning move here, but I don't see what black does. Does black have a move that does anything, or is black totally tied up?
Rook c7, queen e7 looks pretty good.
Looks good.
Queen's gonna go back.
But if you were black here, what would you do?
Well, rook c7, queen e8.
No, if you were black here, what would you do? Because it's your turn. And for a strong player, it's obvious, you can't, this is, that's crushing. Even if there's no threat, you know that black can't move. So like eventually, if you can't find a threat, probably like this will win. Okay, so he played rook a8. Okay, he's getting counterplay. I'm not sure where it is. Okay, rook c7, as I suggested. Queen e6, ooh, queen e6. Yeah. And this is really, really nice what he did here. Okay, this is the part that was nice. Okay, so I could lecture about this position for an hour because I use this joke every class. Come on, I get paid by the hour. So, again, this is the kind of move where I know the guy's world class. Okay, because first of all, low-rated players never dominate their opponent; they just take their pieces. So when you're on 3 pieces, you know you're a good player. On 3 pieces. A really good player like Kramnik, they dominate their opponent can't move. Okay, so no super grandmaster would even consider rook takes e6. Okay, I'm not saying it's a bad move, although I am, because the rook is here. So you can't move the king, and you can't defend your pawn sufficiently. And this is an end game, and I've said many times, I didn't say many enough, what does white do in an end game, or black?
King in the center.
I never said that, but move the king up. Yeah, okay. And so white wants to move his king up, okay, which reminds you of what game? It reminded me of the game, and then I read the internet comments and somebody said, I was like, yes.
Kasparov.
Oh,
Wait, the game you mentioned before.
Kasparov Topalov?
No.
Because that was the guy
The one where
losing.
the king goes up. All the way.
Right, what game is that?
Kasparov.
No Kasparov.
Clausen. No. With the O and not the A.
They're all yelling at their homes and they're
Kalashnikov.
like, why are you, well, that's a gun. Okay, the correct answer obviously is Short Timon. Obviously. Okay, nothing. No, nothing. Okay, the word for today, it's like Sesame Street, is tabula rasa. Is that 2 words? Okay, now, in this position, obviously white wants to move his king up because white always wants to move his king up. It's an endgame. Conversely, black wants to do something, but it ain't moving his king up because that's really illegal. It's the most illegal. If you were black, where would you move a piece where it's really, really good? It's like, wow, this is a great square for my piece.
94.
Okay. So you played F3, and now you don't play 94, ever. Never play F3. And then you can walk your king up whichever way you want, and black can't do anything. And F3 shows what a strong player he is. He's not interested in this pawn, he's interested in black's counterplay. He's like, I'm dominating. This is winning. What is black gonna do? And if black, starts doing stuff, okay, then black is okay. After F3, black can't do anything. Okay, so 98, boo! 98, God, horrible. But he stopped G7, so that was pretty good. Okay, now, if you start running around with your rook, you start moving your rook and starting to do stuff, then when I play rook check, and then rook here, you're not going to be too happy, because you're going to get mated and lose your knight. Yeah. So, king comes up, puts him in the corner. Nobody puts the king on h8 in the corner. King comes up, king comes up, king comes up. That's how he rolls. Okay, and white is threatening king f7 and bishop g7 mate. The truth hurts. Now that's domination. Like, well, I can't move. Yeah, that's the way I like to, I just never get to do it. But I like to do it, just can't do it. Yeah, so Short stole every idea he ever had from Tarrasch. Exactly, that was a boring king march. Yeah. And then I think he resigned, which made sense. Yeah. So that was strategically dark square, 7th rank, moving his king up. That was the opposite of the first game, where he sacked all his pieces. In this game, he moved his king. He made sure the guy couldn't move by restricting him, and that was Rady, who was a top 10 player. Okay, last but not least is more your style. You guys thought that was boring. You're not going to think this is boring. Yeah. So Rudolf Spielmann was famous for crazy chess, like wild and crazy. And Tarrasch was like, all right, let's go. And then that was good for you guys. So of course white played. What's the craziest move?
F4.
F4. Yeah. Okay. And Tarrasch played probably the most aggressive way against F4, the Falkbeer counter gambit.
Where is this?
Where? It's in a place that no longer exists.
Oh, okay, that's.
It's in, Germany and Austria all rolled into one, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, and it was round 11, because back then they played 500 round tournaments. Now they play like 5 rounds tighter. Okay, so D5. And when I had black in this position, I played C6, as in the famous match, Simon Williams-Ben Feingold. And he played the King's Gambit once, and I won this game. He said, I'm not playing anymore, but you obviously know it. Even though I think I got nothing, but I won the game. Okay, so E4, that's the Falkbeer counter gambit. Now, if you want to see great victories for black, you could look at Falkbeer's games, if you have a database that goes back that far. It was like 1844. And also Morphy games. Morphy has many Falkbeers where he's taken them to school. Okay, so D3, knight F6, and now he played D takes E4, but I'm pretty sure knight C3 is a famous game of Morphy's, by the way. So now I'm out of my theory. Okay, knight E4, knight F3, stopping queen H4 check, bishop C5, Queen e2, and black played the obvious move.
Castle.
See, yeah. Oh, bishop, I thought you were right, but you did the next move. Yeah. G4, then he castled.
Whoa,
Yes, he only sacked one piece, he sacked all of his pieces.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
what the?
Well, when the guy's king is in the middle. Now, Karen was
Oh,
suggesting
and
all these
he
moves
takes that
in bullet chess. Karen was like, sack this, sack that, right? Yeah. So, white's position is very, very suspicious, but white's going to take all of black's pieces. So it's really fun. And if players play like that today, it would be fun, not fun for them. Wow. Be like, Carlson, why'd you lose 4 games in a row? Then he would be like, I'm not playing this anymore. Okay. Now, the only grandmaster now who, you know, occasionally plays the King's Gambit, Nigel Short. Occasionally. And actually, there was a grandmaster before him who played it all the time. And it was Judah Polgar. And she actually, when she played the King's Gambit, on move 3, she wouldn't play knight f3, she played bishop c4. Although, against the Falkbeer, she wouldn't do that. Okay? And you all know the famous game, Judah Polgar Ben Feingold, which was in a game 15 tournament in 1988 or 89, and I checkmated her in the endgame. Mate in 1, she overlooked it. So I won because I mated her. Otherwise, it was looking bad for me. Okay, so G takes F, Rook E8, that looks good for black. But then, Bishop G2. The problem is, you can't be like, oh, this wins a queen, because you're not really winning a queen. You could, like, for example, let's say you blundered, because that's your MO. Let's say you like go knight G3, and you're like, well, I got this action, I got this action. Looks good, right? Well, when white takes all of your pieces, well, you already sacrificed a piece. So now white has a rook and 2 pieces for queen. So that might not be the best. It might be. Okay, so he played knight f2, because you can't, yeah. And white played the obvious move. I actually think it is the obvious move. Shows you what I know. It's the only move to save your queen, so it's obvious.
Knight E5?
Knight e5, yeah. All right, let's have some fun. Knight takes h1, bishop takes h1, knight d7, develop your pieces. f6, never play f6. Knight e4. Everybody's having fun this game. And this. Still theory. Yeah, see, this is how they played a long time ago. They don't play
Oh,
like
that's
this
awesome,
now.
that's awesome.
Yeah, they don't play like this now. Yeah. So you could see either side could win. And actually, there was a game today between Nadich and Kramnik. And my son, like sort of paraphrasing me, put on Twitter that both sides might resign simultaneously. Nadich likes to play crazy chess and Kramnik does not, but Kramnik likes to win. So they got some crazy position. Nadich was probably winning and they ended up drawing a piece for 3-pawn endgame where they were both trying to win or lose, but it was a draw. Okay. So all 3 results are possible and likely in these kinds of positions. Okay, Queen h4 check, King f1, Rook f8. Uh-oh, this is a serious threat here. Okay, now, I mentioned Kaidenov earlier in the lecture, the guy born and bred in Kentucky. And we talked a lot in the chess camp once about kids at a chess camp, and the kids were like, oh, I have an isolated pawn, I have double pawns, and they would cry. And then, or maybe that was us. Anyway, and we were like, what about active pieces? And they're like, what's that? What's an active piece? So we would try to instill in them that active pieces is good. So even though you guys like all these pawns here, you guys love those pawns, this is where white's pieces are, and this is where black's pieces are. So that's not good for white. Yeah. Black's king is very safe. White's king is never safe. So if I could cheat and put my rook somewhere and put my bishop on g3, okay, then I would like white. Because I like 2 bishops, I like 500 pawns in the center, but I mean, your pieces are no good, you lose. Your pieces have to move out. Okay, king g1, queen d4 check, attacking all the pawns. Queen takes, pinning the bishop. Knight d7 is a funny move. It's not a move most of us would consider, but now your knight's hanging because it's not pinned anymore. So knight d7 actually makes it sort of easy. Yeah, king h8, tucking his king away. And again, these are like super grandmaster moves that you wouldn't think of. Retreat the knight, put the king safe on h8, because you're just winning anyway. White doesn't have any chance. all of white's pawns are hanging, and his king is permanently open. There's no defense to the king. Yeah, rook e8. And yeah, this is just silliness. Now he's going to attack on the g file. Horrible. And here he resigned.
But remember, Spielman was true to his nature. He liked the the two bishops and rook exchanged down with the
Yep.
pawn, and he claimed in some of his writings that that was equal to the two rooks.
No, I agree that a lot of times two bishops is as good as a rook and a knight or two rooks, especially when you have some extra pawns. Unfortunately, his king wasn't very safe, which happens in a king's gambit. Somebody's king gets exposed. And again, these games were all very different, and a lot of people, the crazies I read on the internet, they thought that Tarrasch had a real universal style. He could win any kind of game. And these games weren't really anything alike. In one game he sacked all his pieces. In the other game he was accepting sacrifices and meeting his opponent anyway. In the other game he was getting him in a positional bind. And these were all very strong players. And when I did my research for this lecture, a few of the games were like Tarrasch versus Doofus. And I'm like, I don't want to see Tarrasch beating somebody you guys never heard of, right? So Richard Rady, Rudolf Spielman, Aaron Nimzovich, those were top guys. And obviously, if you're beating one top guy, like I did when I beat Mamedyarov, you're like, okay, do it again. And then that's not going to happen. But if you're beating top guys all the time, okay, then, right? People were impressed when I beat Mamedyarov, but then they were like, wait, when did you do that? 10 years ago? 20 years ago? Yeah. So that's the problem is anybody can beat anybody, but if you want to beat him game after game after game to be one of the top players in the world, that's a lot tougher. And the reason it's tough is you really have to have a universal style. You can't just play one way and just, I'm going to win all my games that way. And as you can see, Tarrasch was a top player and he was a doctor. So he was busy when he was not playing chess, which is unusual to have another profession like that. Now Lasker was a doctor. He wasn't a medical doctor, was he? Lasker? He was a mathematician, right? Yeah.
Oh, he had-
these guys?
He was a mathematician.
Yeah. What's that? Yeah. But I mean, yeah, he was a practicing medical doctor. He's like, I'll be back in a second. I have a move to play. So, yeah. But it's funny the way the game turned around, where Black's king was completely safe and White's king isn't, and White's down material, and it's the worst thing ever. Only one position is worse, and that was my game with Dave earlier. That was much worse.
How old was Tarrasch when he played this game?
He was pretty old because he was.
Was he in his 60s?
He was. Well, let's have a look. I have the internet. The internet knows everything, except combination to safe. 1934, he was 71. So if I could find anything.
That was 23, that was 23, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was 60.
Yeah.
Pretty darn good.
Pretty
Huh?
good for. Yeah, this was a.
I wonder how old Spielman was.
Well, we'll do a Spielman lecture some other time.
And we'll
Now,
find
as
out.
a last funny aside, which is a true story, if it's funny, it's true. A friend of mine who's 2300, in 1988, as you all know, there was a candidates match between Spielman and Saruman. And Spielman won. And when he found it, he's like, wow, Spielman, and he thought it was this Spielman. And we're like, Spielman's been dead for like 40 years, what are we talking about? Now, if Spielman was alive, that would be impressive, because he probably would have been over 100. So, but it's obviously Jonathan Spielman, obviously. And then
Another great Spielman.
Then he was less impressed. But the other Spielman spells it differently, and it's from a different country. This is IEL, and he's EEL.
Yeah, this is from
Yeah,
A.
but what's funny is Jonathan Spielman has written several books, and on the cover of one of his books, they wrote John Spielman with an H. That was an every cover, there's a typo on the cover. That's tough. It's tough out there writing chess books. So anyway, Rudolf Spielman, John Spielman, that would be a good game, but it's different eras. Yeah. All right, thanks for coming to class. And next Thursday, we're not doing class anymore. We're doing a Blitz tournament. So if you want to come to these classes where I talk about the top players from yesteryear and endgame play, that'll be just on Tuesdays. Okay, and then you can see if Wimpy's here.
Okay, thank you
Class
very much. That
dismissed.
was great. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.